So welcome everybody to episode 7 of our From the Capital to Our Classroom series about championing investments in public schools. I'm your host, Robin Romer. I'm the VP for Legislation for Oregon PTA. And it's my great pleasure today to talk with representatives from the Oregon School Employee Association. Before we get started, couple of classroom rules, as always. As you've probably seen, this meeting will be recorded so we can share it out afterwards. If you like, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. You don't have to, but it's always nice to hear a little bit more about who's here, as sometimes don't know you. And also, as usual, the first hour of this will be in the form of a webinar. So this means it will be me and our guests will be talking. And if you have questions and want to participate in the discussion, feel free to do so in the chat. Drop your questions, drop your comments, and we'll try to pick them up as we go along. We'll try to keep this to about an hour till 8:30 when we stop the recording and the official part, and then can hang out. That's the moment where you can feel free to come off mute and ask questions directly. And it always has been very nice at these events to just be a little bit more casual without that recording in the background. So if you have any feedback, if you have any questions, if you have any ideas on how we can do this even better, just email me at legislation@oregonpta.org. And with that, it's my great pleasure to welcome our guests and have them introduce themselves. And we're going to start with Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Wofford. I'm Oregon School Employees Association State President. I hail from Josephine County, Grants Pass, Oregon, to be specific, and I am a classified employee at Rogue Community College and the state president.
Thank you for being here. Teri.
Thank you. I'm Teri Jones. I'm OSEA State Vice President. I run an elementary school library in Coos Bay, Oregon. We are a Title I school. We have about 300 students. I also service our preschool. They also get library services, and we have about 4 classrooms of preschoolers.
That is so nice. How large is the whole school?
My school runs about 300. Our preschool is 72 students. Their max. They can do 18 per classroom. So, but our preschool is held at the district office. They don't really have quite a permanent home yet.
Thank you. And Mary.
Hi, my name's Mary Hofer. I am a high school office manager in Bend, Oregon. I've been with my school district since 2000, and I have served as the state board secretary with OSEA since 2015, and I am very honored to do so.
And how large is your school in your district?
I'm at Bend High School, and last year and this year we've numbered about 1,200. We opened a 4th comprehensive school in the area, and so we shrank from about just over 1,600 to in the 1,200s.
Thank you. And maybe Sarah, if you could quickly explain, what is OSEA?
Sure. So Oregon School Employees Association represents classified school employees. We actually represent from Head Start, pre-K, all the way through community college. And classified employees are the employees who are not licensed and not admins, so everyone else. So we cook it, we clean it, we fix it, we pay it, we turn it on, we program it.
You drive
all
it?
the things. We drive it, we secure it. That's us. We are literally 70% of each school. And OSEA is lucky enough to represent 138 separate entities, school districts, and we have about 24,000 in our bargaining unit, and we cover all of the counties of Oregon. So we're very large and diverse and span the entire state of Oregon.
Thank you so much for your service on the board, but all of your members were going to start with that because I know they are an essential part of every school, and without you, schools would not be the place they are. I want to talk with you. I want to look back a little bit on what you've seen throughout your careers. I want to talk about the status quo and a little bit about what's coming up and where you see things going. But let's start with looking back and also kind of something. I want to ask one question I've asked everybody on this series. It's, what is something that you really love about our public schools in Oregon? And feel free to go in whichever order you like. And
I'll go ahead and start with that one. Some of the changes that I've seen that are just so much for the better and definitely fall into what I love about public schools in Oregon has been the acceptance of differences. I have seen just in my own school district, the growth of student mentors to our students with disabilities, emotional, intellectual or physical disabilities in our life skills programs. They've been mentors in the classroom. They've created a unified sports programs that have now, that program is expanded through Special Olympics to other school districts across the state and country, actually. And it's just so wonderful the way they have come into their own, and to see at my school how you can be yourself, you can be what would have been different, and now it's just normal. And I love that about our schools district.
Teri.
When I get to talk to colleagues from other states and so forth, being associated with libraries, I'm most proud of at least in my area of the state, we fund our libraries fairly well. You know, sometimes I have had to go out and get community grants and so forth, but I've always had a good base salary. It's just, I always want more. And I appreciate that I'm able to provide my students with diverse materials. That's really important to me. And when I talk to other states, sometimes it's rather shocking to hear, number one, if you're not funded, you know, right there, that's a losing battle. Or if you're only relying on volunteers and donations, that really doesn't build the kind of diverse library that serves students best. So I always come away, you know, with a little check mark, and I go back to my school board and just say, yeah, thank you again. Thank you again. So I appreciate that. That's something I'm very proud of.
That's
for
wonderful.
Oregon.
Sarah.
So I'm gonna follow what these two incredible leaders have said and say that it is the diversity and the inclusion, but I think that's because it represents the true neighborhoods that the schools are in. And so I think that is just something that we are really fortunate to have such diversity and such opportunity coming up through all of the different districts and through all of the different employees and educators. So and I really love that so many of us get to go to the alma mater of our parents, or our kids get to go to our school. Like, it doesn't have to be college, it can be our elementary school, it can be our middle school, it can be our high school. Like, there's pride and we own that, and you know, it's great.
Yeah, I love that. How have things, you've been around for a little bit. How have things changed? I assume especially after COVID, but even maybe before, just looking back a little bit. Teri.
I've been working in Coos Bay School District 9 for over 20 years. And it was starting kind of before the pandemic hit, but the pandemic certainly accelerated some of the difficulties we're facing right now. You know, when I first started, we used to have assistants for every grade. Like sometimes two teachers would share an assistant, but they were truly assistants. And that is not what's in the schools, or at least in my school now. Almost every support personnel, they have their own agenda, they have their own program, they have their job isn't to assist someone else. It is directly working with students, whether it's behavior or reading intervention. So that's been a change. And certainly our behavior specialists, that is not something we ever had when I first started. And now we have more behavior personnel than we do reading interventionists. That's not something I'm proud of. I consider that to be kind of an issue that needs to be looked at community-wide. It needs that seems to be an excessive amount of people that are directly working on some of our behavior challenges. And I am in a very young school, but I mean, we have very young kids, but that is still an interesting look at how it has changed over 20 years. So.
Thank you. Mary, Sarah?
What I've seen in my 24 years at Bend High School is like to piggyback what Teri said about the thin staffing is we've all added a security component to our jobs now. We have these secure vestibules, and any visitor in the school needs to be, checked in. Every entry needs to be eagle eye watched. Every person, every student needs to be eagle eye watched because of different behaviors or maybe causing them to want to take off. Where I used to wear, dress shoes and skirts to work. Now I wear tennis shoes and a walkie-talkie because I am, running around, and that is a big change that we've seen, and because of the culture and the times that we're living in.
I look forward to the opportunity of the growth that we've been able to see. So I think what's changed really is the availability of information and technology. And I know being a parent of a student on an IEP and with special needs, it's one of those things that's kind of frightening, but being able to talk to her and calm her down during the day was something that I didn't have as a child. And I see that resource is there for some people. And I think that in what Teri was saying, in that we used to have assistants and there would be classified staff available for students to reach out to. Now it's almost lost that used to be there, because now parents are having to text and high schoolers are having to deal with their younger siblings. And, so there's both the opportunity of technology, but almost a overabundance of it.
Yeah, and we're getting right into the challenges and the funding. I assume you would agree that we don't have enough funding in our schools. I see agreement there. What are areas where you feel that the most, and where your members feel that the most, the need for funding?
Staffing and training.
Can you elaborate?
Yeah. Teri,
You
did
want
you
me
want to
to?
say?
Oh,
Well,
I was just gonna, staffing certainly, but for me, infrastructure. We're really, we passed a bond quite a while, maybe a decade ago. We had 3 buildings two were totally redone, totally rebuilt, and then mine was renovated. And I did get a new library out of it, but yet it still isn't a good structure for the students we currently have. We have kids that are just running in the halls sometimes. So infrastructure, having buildings that fit certainly, and Mary touched on security. So we do have vestibules, and they gave us all these gates that never work. So that makes it even more difficult. But having a place for our students that need more non-traditional classroom settings or areas where they can recharge or take a break. We are finding that our schools are not built for those services. So that is a huge expenditure, and that's one that usually goes to a community. That's really not in the state funding. That's where you have to go, and each community, if you're in a depressed community, you're kind of out of luck. So that, for me, that's one of the biggest funding challenges.
Yeah.
Is how do we have safe schools with adequate space?
And Teri, I thought I was cutting you off. So I just want to definitely go back to like staffing
Yeah.
and training. And I think that it's, I appreciate that Teri brought up that bonds. I wrote down a note to mention that it's specific to who can get it passed, right? Who are the levies that can get the bonds, like who are the districts? So that's great for that district, but what works in Coos Bay for Teri may not work in, Three Rivers for Josephine County, where we have 2-hour-long bus rides. And so it truly is staffing, it's training, it's access to all of these things and making sure that we have, and I know, this will come up, but making sure that we have funding for mandates and that we have true funding for all of the different needs that our schools have.
Can I follow up
Mary.
with the trainings, just so people understand a little bit more specific on what kind of trainings do you think your members deserve to have that are really missing? And
I think that Mary, do you want to?
Well, I was just gonna say that for our staff that are working with our students with special needs, when they start, they aren't necessarily getting the training they need to be able to keep themselves safe and keep the students safe. Crisis prevention, how to diffuse the situation, how to be trained on the needs of that particular student by being able to have time to view their IEPs and know what that student's triggers are and keep them and the students safe, like I said. And what that's causing is this huge revolving door and lack of retention, because if the staff either doesn't feel safe or doesn't feel like they're doing their job well, they aren't going to be able to stay there. And so the students then can't continue to have growth if they have a new staff member every year. It's just always a backward step for them. And then, of course, in most of our communities in Oregon, we have a problem with affordable housing, which makes it so hard for some of the lowest paid school employees to be able to afford to live in the communities that they work in, which then again contributes to that revolving door. We constantly have new staff rather than the well-experienced trained staff working with our students.
do you want to
So,
follow? Yeah.
Robin, I do want to say that part of it is we are constantly passing great bills, like Senate Bill 756 with access to IEPs, where classified employees get access. That means we get time, we get to read it, we get to help write it. Like those are all things that were definitely the intent of these bills. And it's not just that we need training, it's that we need time in our days to perform these tasks. So not only do we need to be respected and to be seen and for people to understand that we are with the children and of the public schools 100% of our time. It doesn't matter if we are doing food service or if we are doing bus driving, like we are the one picking up, we're the transportation, making sure that your child is safe. We're the one making sure that their food is warm. And so give us the respect to train us and give us the time that we need to learn these things, and also the time we need to breathe and become a community within the public school.
Yes. As a parent, I so agree with what you say. Can you maybe share, you have been around and doing this for a long time, but you're also saying that many don't. Kind of what makes the difference, and how much turnover, if you have that somewhere on top of your head, like how much turnover do you see?
For our behavior staff, it's almost anywhere from 50 to 75% almost every year, because they'll go into other positions that take them out of behavior, or they'll go from one school to another, you know, where they feel like they are more protected. So our reading interventionists, they, you know, if one of them retires, then somebody will fill that void. But I would say in my district, it is our behavior staff, because it's entry level and it is the hardest job there is. And people, unless you have done it, you really have no idea. You know, there's this idea that you'll talk to them nicely, you'll convince them to behave, and it doesn't. You really have to be humble. You cannot have an ego in that job at all. You have to be the calmest. You know, and our rule in our school is every day is a new day. So that student that kicked you in the shin yesterday, you are welcoming them the next day, and we do that. But when you have to do that, you know, 7 hours a day, every day, it takes very special people to be able to do that. And some people, it's easy to burn out.
In Bend Lapine, we did a stat, and of the around 900 classified staff members, we had close to 70% were 5 years or less on the job. And of those, the majority of those that are 5 years or less are the inclusion EAs that work with our special needs students. And that is our area of highest turnover. So the students that need consistency the most and that will thrive with consistency are the ones in the least consistent of environments right now.
And I hear that from special ed parents as well, how they are concerned that they have to welcome new folks all the time too. Is there something else, as we talk about how hidden often the work is that your members do you want to share another example of kind of what people don't know about things your members do that is so out of the sight often, if you...
I go back to the special education or special needs or having to do feeding tubes, insulin, to having to teach things, to having caseloads but aren't recognized for caseloads, for constantly being somebody else's everything, and still showing up every day, and each day is a new day. Teri, what did you have?
I have to give a shout out to our secretaries. Their job has changed a lot in my time in our school district. They are monitoring those cameras. They are making sure, we can't lock the doors. So they are constantly making sure we don't have a runner get out the doors. They have kids in there eating lunch with them because they had an issue in the cafeteria. Or someone's just having a bad day, and so they come and they'll sit with the secretaries. I'm assuming they still have to do attendance and they do purchasing and things like that, but most of the time they are they keep everything running. I am in awe of our secretaries.
I have a little story. I was in the community at a doctor's appointment recently, and the radiologist who was helping me, when they found out I was an office manager at Bend High, they asked if I knew an office manager at one of the other high schools. And of course I did. And she said that by being a student aide in the office for that year changed her life, and the encouragement that she got from the office manager every day is one of the catalysts that encouraged her to go to the radiology school to continue her education after high school, and helped her to get in touch with the right people to help her find scholarships. And then there she was, working as a radiologist in Central Oregon, successful, and yet still remembered and attributed it to that high school secretary. And that spoke volumes to me to see that true impact years later that she had on that person's life.
The importance of the trusted adult, whoever it is in the building, to make a difference. I want to switch gears a little bit. We've talked how missing funding affects your members. How do you see it affect the children? We talked a little bit of special ed. We can talk more about that, and then also general ed, and just overall, how do you think we're missing really funding more, and how does that affect students? How do you see it affect different students, maybe differently? I don't know, socioeconomic or other disparities. Nodding.
Our students, that is why we all do what we do, is for our students. And their needs are such, I'm not even sure what all the answers are for them. I wish we could bring in counseling and even reaching out and giving more opportunities. Some of it community-wide. Is there a way to fund daycare and after school programs and so forth, just to make sure, whether it's homework help or whatever? I think I'm at a Title I school, we do get some additional funds, but for many of our students, when they leave us, we don't know then. That's where we're worried. When they leave us, are they going to be able to sleep? Are they going to be able to eat? Do they have a roof over their house? I am in an area that has high houselessness. And that, I think that's what really worries us the most, is during the summer. And we try to open up, but summer school also has limited funding. And usually it's only academic based, at least in my district. So if you're a student that just needs a little more of a push to get up to grade level, that is the target audience. But the need is so much greater. We certainly want to make sure all of our special needs, behavior, whatever, we want all of them to be able to have summer opportunities. And we want them to also be cultural and social and fun, and a place where we can touch base and keep an eye on them, to be honest. So that's where I think funding for students would help. What more can we give them to make sure that they come to school ready to learn? I mean, we meet their needs. If they come to school and what they really need is a bed, we give them a place to sleep. But then you're not getting the academic needs. So whatever we can do to really, enhance, the school, sure, but also how do we keep an eye on them when they're not with us?
Mary, Sarah.
So your question goes to how does it impact the students? And I would say sometimes it comes from transportation, right? Longer bus rides or not having transportation, needing to do the walk to schools, or I think about clean air in Southern Oregon when the fires, or where are we going to have schools, backpack programs, do we have shoes? Because when I went to school, and I know this is true of these two incredible leaders here, when they went to school, like we had that closet we could go to and get that pair of shoes and get that extra shirt and all of those things, and we just don't really have those sorts of things as accessible anymore. And I think part of that comes from funding the employees, funding the professional educators in the classrooms to make sure that we can do those extra things, or to make sure that we are supporting the economy of the community with these incredible employment opportunities that public school is as well, and lifting up not just our students but the whole economic neighborhood, and making sure that we are lifting everyone up. And so I think that it's not just one thing. We can't just talk about students or the educators, but together it truly is just one big great opportunity.
Yeah. Can I just add one thing about affecting our students and staff is at least in our district, we've seen the number of nurses per site, per student go down. And so now we have our school nurses covering multiple schools instead of one nurse per school. And then suddenly those nursing duties that should be done by a professional licensed registered nurse are being done by a secretary or a classroom assistant who are not professionally medically trained. And, those things do affect your students. You may think it's very simple. The secretary can give my student their medicine at lunchtime. And sure, but I'm not following their, if seeing how this dose is affecting them. I'm not, medically trained for things like paying attention to insulin levels or, feeding tubes that some of our other EAs are doing that are not registered nurses. And that's just a small piece. Having someone there who can deal with a broken bone or a deep gash or something on the spot, that's big. That person who your students can go to, who you can go to, and to not have those in every building every day, does hurt students. It does hurt staff. And that's just, one more example of how the funding has affected us.
Yeah, and both of you just talked about the role of the school in the community, be it like the medical services there, be it the providing support to the economy. If you're interested, I would love to hear a little bit more how you see it, just the role of school in your community and all the functions that you see schools provide. A little bit above, we're often just talk about the academics, and obviously also important, that we sometimes, I feel, neglect just what cornerstone schools are in our communities. If that is something that resonates with you, do you want to like to comment on or not? I have more questions.
I could just share real, just from the role that I see my high school playing in our community. It's a safe place for a lot of kids. It is, I think, like Sarah said, a place where kids have comfort. They know that that they'll have, 2 meals, they'll have breakfast and they'll have lunch. They'll have, people who are there, who are paying attention to their needs and caring for them and listening to them. And when we water down or get smaller staff levels, or we have more students than staff, and we increase those ratios, suddenly that relationship that you would have for the students, now you have to pay attention to more kids, and you might not be able to have time to build as deep of a connection or relationship, and you might miss something that you normally would have caught. You might, because we are ones who will kind of catch that, hey, this student's a little off today. They're having a bad day. We're the ones who, see them at 7 o'clock in the morning when I get there, an hour before the teachers do, but I'm going to get them in out of the cold, and I'm going to, care for them, and, make sure they're warm, and hopefully be able to catch if they're having a bad morning. And that's been a great experience, I think, for me personally.
Absolutely. Now I almost forgot the question. What we're working on?
Just the role of the school in the community.
Our community does a pretty good job. I mean, unfortunately, we don't have mass transit. We have a couple buses that go around. But I know, like, one time I thought, hey, if it were snowing, rare event, I know, but how would I get to it? It was going to be like over an hour. I am an 8-minute drive from school. So transportation is a real issue for some of our families. Housing is another issue. Our public library is phenomenal. They do a lot of great programs, but the kids have to get there and they have to get home. And so those, I think, for rural areas, transportation is huge, and you can't zoom in. You got to get them there. So I think that would be something in our community. We do have some buses now that drive around, but kids need something more immediate. Nobody wants to be on a bus with their child for over 30 minutes to get to the library. So that's one thing that I would like to see, because I think my community does have a lot to offer. It's just, how do you get them? And even when I check out books to students, they lose a lot of books. These are young kids. Their dogs eat them. They're younger kids color in them. We don't charge anybody. I mean, if they want to, that's fine, but we don't make anybody pay. But it's those conversations that I have with them. One time a young girl said, I'm sorry, I don't know where my book is. And I said, well, what if you went home, cleaned your room, maybe it would turn up? And she said, we're living in a tent. I think I would see it. And that's when I said, how about if I give you a really big Ziploc bag? Do you think that could help you? And she goes, yeah. So, that conversation then gave another solution. But when you talk to the kids, they tell you everything. And you're just like, oh, okay, I hadn't thought of that. And, so we try as a community, but the issues are bigger than sometimes we're aware of.
Sarah, did you want to? No. But I had a question for you, since you're in community college, you see what happens with our students after school. And I wanted to just hear your perspective a little bit on, like, have you seen changes, how they arrive at community college, and like in how they're educated, and just maybe have some thoughts on that. And how are schools preparing them well enough for community college?
I think that you will find at community college, the average age, and I could be off a couple of years, the average age is in the 30s for first-time students or returning students. And that's so many, and so much more apprenticeship and nursing and all of these things. And when they come from, like, directly from high school, when students come directly from high school or directly after getting their GED, in order to qualify for the Promise Grant. So the Oregon Promise Grant's great, if you apply 6 months before you graduate or get your GED, and then you go straight into it and you're already on that track, you know what you're going to do. And so those are the students that you don't worry about as much. It's the ones who take that year or two off that come back and they're like, oh, now I have to do a refresher. But do I think that our public schools are getting our students ready for community college, for getting up and knowing how to do your homework and being able to take care of those things? Yes, I think that we know how to read, we know how to do math, we know how to do all these things. My daughter's in a transition program, and I am thankful that somebody is teaching her how to balance a checkbook, because that is not something that was in the classroom when she graduated, and not something that was part of her modified diploma. And so those are the kind of things, those life skills, like, hey, I went to the grocery store today, I had to do recipes. Like, are those the kind of things that are missing then? So a community college, you think you see all of the issues in a neighborhood, or in a district, in elementary school. Now you've got all of those employees, students, their children, their parents, and your employees who are working at the community college need food banks, need their own food pantries, qualify for their own assistance. And so, I think that we prepare our students really well. I don't know that we fund our educators enough.
Switching gears again, and these topics are so tough, so I feel a little bit bad about switching after such heartbreak stories. But because you are from 3 different parts of the state, you serve statewide, I would love to hear your perspective on differences between different areas in the state and schools. Is there something that you're seeing? Most of us parents, we see 3 schools in our life, right? For our kids, we see an elementary school, we see 1 middle school, we see 1 high school. And it's very rare that we branch out, and maybe we know a couple more schools in our district, but really that statewide perspective and the differences that exist statewide is not something that we often can perceive. So I was wondering if you have something to share on what you've been seeing throughout your career and your service statewide.
I'll say, for a general standpoint, and I touched on this earlier, is bonds and levies and being able to get certain things passed, and property taxes. And like, who wants to vote in that extra tax, who wants to vote in that extra bond, who has students in school that feel like their funds are being used for the community they live in. I think that's a lot of differences. We also have climate differences in our state, where one side is sinking, literally Terry's school was partially sinking into the ocean, and Mary is off in the desert. And so these are the kind of things. I'm down in Fireland in Southern Oregon, where we lost 3 entire cities. And so these are all real things that are very different, and we're having to deal with all at the same time.
Terry, Mary,
It is amazing the way the funding works for the state of Oregon. You would think things would be pretty level, but when I have visited, like I was in Beaverton, and there, however they fund, I mean, like their libraries, they're the library, the lowest paid people in the district. It was rather shocking. And if they wanted to go to meetings, they had to do it on their own time. And it was just so, I find it interesting that supposedly we've kind of evened out the playing field, but I never feel that way when I go to other schools. I mean, and there are times that I think Clackamas, their CTE programs, I think it was North Clackamas, phenomenal. I wanted to stay there. I could have spent like 3 days just really exploring that. So, I know a while ago, before the pandemic, the legislatures took a tour around and looked at all the different schools, I think it's time to do that again. Let's go around and look what is working, what isn't, and how are things being funded? Are they getting, additional monies from corporate sponsorships? Are they, how do we equal the opportunities for all of the kids around the state? Because they are all so different.
Mary.
I was just going to add, I think Terry and Sarah both said that great. I'm in a school district that recently had a attempt at a levy fail in Central Oregon. And we do have a very high cost of living. And, the story, to the community was the state's fund school districts in Bend the same as they fund school districts in, on the McKenzie River and in Eugene and Springfield and all across the state. We have different costs of living. And so to make those same dollars stretch is there's inequity in that. But I forgot what I was going to say. So I'm done.
When it comes back, let us know. We'll just circle back. But I think that transitions very well to our last part about looking forward to 2025. And maybe you can share a little bit on what you're hoping for 2025, if OSEA has already specific plans on advocacy that you can want to talk about.
Yeah. So when you talk about looking forward to 2025, there are a lot of different ways to look at that. When we talk about classified staff, it's about bargaining and making sure that we get all of the great wins that we got, like access to IEPs, being able to speak to parents, unemployment, just cause, all of these different things in our contracts without having to fight all the time. When we're talking about our students, it's about making sure that there's funding, that there's, lunches, that there's breakfast, that nobody has to throw food away, that there's nothing like that. When we're talking about our employees, there's work shouldn't hurt. There is making sure that we are able to actually report to someone somewhere where someone is listening to us. And actually understanding what we're going through every single day. It doesn't have to be a special it doesn't have to be a special EA. It doesn't have to be an educational assistant. It doesn't have to be a secretary or a nurse. Like the bus driver, the transportation specialist, the cafeteria worker, the IT, the custodian, we're all getting harmed, and we all need to be able to vocalize that, and there needs to be somebody who's listening. So that's truly where we're headed in 2025, is making sure that people hear us.
I would just add, I would like to see our schools and our school district a place where people want to work at, want to stay at, want to retire in, want to be that stable adult in a young student's life that they will know from, in my thing, from grades 9 through 12, that they meet as a freshman and still see them when they graduate, that we, just bring our schools back to that place of pride where we're safe. We all feel safe as employees. We feel safe as, coworkers. We feel heard and respected, and all those things will trickle down to having a much better experience for the students in our lives as well.
Agree. I think they covered most of it. I do want to add, I was at the governor's summer learning conference where he looked at summer learning, and it was a what if. Discussions weren't about, okay, how do we evaluate whether something is working or not. It was more, how do we get those opportunities to all students? So for 2025, that's really what I want to see. I want the what ifs. What if, what do we need to enrich? And it's not just about evaluating, it's creating those partnerships and working together. I mean, I loved school. School should be fun. It should be fun for everybody, the workers, the admin, the students, the parents, the families. School is such a great place for opportunity. And so for 2025, I want to see those partnerships really working. And with the legislature, of course.
Ultimately with them too.
Yes.
Yeah, and this is kind of my last question and feel free to open whatever you have, what's on your mind that you wanted to say that you haven't said. This is the question where you can go there. And you talked about it a little bit, what should parents, with parents here, with families here, we have school board members here, with the general public, what should they know from your perspective when they advocate for schools in 2025? What is the one message maybe that you have for all of us listening?
I guess I don't want parents to be afraid that we're judging or anything like that. We want what's best for our students, and that includes them. So I really want parents to not be afraid to ask questions. You know, how can I help? Or, my student came home and said this. Don't discount those things. We're here to help. We want to help. We want that relationship with the parents as well. That can make a huge difference in a child's life. When I get to know a parent, sometimes bells go off and I'm thinking, oh, or they can give me a clue. I have found this works with my student. So parents, I know that there are vegetables and there are all these rules and stuff, but come on in, see your school. You're part of it. So that's it.
Mary?
When I think about the collaboration here of parents and school boards, and if we have legislators on the call, I think a lot of it does go to building relationships and sharing your stories, making sure that you are being heard. We want parents to hear us and know what our needs are, but we, like Teri said, want to build those relationships with parents so we can learn more about their students and how we can help them. We want to build relationships with school board members so that, share our stories and give them real, true pictures of what we're experiencing in the schools so that we can identify the problems and work together to solve them. We want to share our stories with the legislators so that they too can see what's happening and be able to use their own influence in ways that can help our schools. And I think just by doing that and building those relationships can be a very important tool.
Sarah, I'll give you the closing.
I want to go back to something you said and something that I have quoted from someone who said, remember, no matter the job title, we are the trusted adult in the room. So what I need for everyone on this call, in this state, in our education systems to know is that we are trusted adults. We are trusted with your children from the moment they leave your house to the moment they leave our school. From everything they touch, from everything they do, from everything you do, from all of the taxes you pay. We do all of these works. This is us. We are trusted. We are a part of your community. We need to be listened to and respected. And so, yeah, let's build some trust.
Thank you. Thank you, all three of you, Mary, Teri, Sarah, for being here tonight, for sharing your stories, for building that collaboration, and for making sure that you are heard. Thank you. And I now want to share some of the work that we're continue to be doing. Just gonna have to go back to sharing. And what we're planning next. Our next episode that we're going to do is on November 13th, and it's going to be different from what we've been doing so far. We want to have a more interactive discussion with everybody who's there to look and plan ahead for 2025. So we're going to give a little bit of a presentation of updates, but then we also want to have some breakout rooms and workshops where people can connect with each other and where we can collectively plan our advocacy work for 2025. So look forward to that on November 13th, 7:30 till 9 p.m. and encourage everybody to join us and register. And we hope to have a large crowd there to really build momentum and impact for 2025. I also wanted to share that we as Oregon PTA asked everybody who is currently on the ballot, I don't know if you know there's an election coming in a few weeks, and we ask everybody who's on the ballot for the Oregon House or Senate to answer 8 questions about education in schools. And we had 51 candidates share their thoughts with us. And this should be the link to, I did not send that to everybody. And that's the wrong link. Let me use this one. There's a giant spreadsheet where we have all the responses from everybody who we got. And we're still collecting answers. I just got one response today from a House representative. And check if your legislator is on there. If they haven't, feel free to reach out to them and ask them to still submit or ask them about what they said. And we hope this can be, the responses can be a point to start conversations around the state with each other, with our legislators and the people wanting to be legislators. And then just real quick, I shared this in the beginning. There's a Slack channel, which is not an Oregon PTA thing, but it's community-led, where if you're interested in hanging out with other education funding folks and having more casual conversation, you can join that Slack channel. I'll put the link for that in the chat. And lastly, another call to share our cell phones in school survey in your community so we can then share with the legislator, as we know there's some legislation potentially coming up, what our communities need. And with that, I want to thank everybody who is here. Obviously, again, Sarah, Teri, and Mary for your insight, for your perspective. And I want to stop recording now, which is someplace else. There.
I want to say thank you for having us here.
Yeah, thank you so much.